Have you ever wondered why one USB-C cable can fast charge a gaming laptop while another leaves your phone saying it needs 5 hours to fill up? Or why your modern MacBook can push 8K video through that tiny port while the cable you grabbed at the airport can barely do the basics? That is the strange truth about USB-C. Well, we thought we had finally reached cable heaven. One connector. No more plugging it in upside down. No more dragging around a tangled mess of chargers. But USB-C is really just a shared outer shell. Behind that smooth little connector is a surprisingly complicated disguise. Some cables are built like race cars, others only look the part. Same plug, very different performance. So today, we are opening up the hidden maze inside the cable most of us use every day to see why USB-C is far more powerful and far more confusing than it seems. Welcome to Simple But Surprising. First, let's clear up one of the most common misunderstandings about USB-C. It is really just the name of the connector's shape. It showed up around 2014 to replace that mess of older ports, bulky USB-A on computers, flimsy micro USB on phones. At the simplest level, USB-C is just a small connector with 24 pins inside, and because it has more pins, it can do a lot more through the same port. But here's the part that matters. USB-C only tells you what the plug looks like. It does not guarantee how fast it is, how much power it can carry, or what features it supports. A USB-C cable in 2026 can still be old USB 2.0 on the inside, which means it may move data painfully slowly, even if it looks modern. Now, that doesn't mean USB-C is a free-for-all. There are still minimum rules. For example, all standard USB-C cables are required to support at least 3 amps of current. And because both ends use the same connector, each end can act as both an input and an output, allowing power and data to move in either direction. That is what we call dual role. Older cables were much more rigid. One side was the host, the other side was the device. Even though most USB-C cables look almost identical on the outside, they can differ massively in 3 key ways: data transfer speed, charging power, and alternate mode support for things like video output. So let's walk through those one by one. Imagine you are packing for a trip and trying to keep things simple. You bring one USB-C cable for your phone and assume it will also work for CarPlay, file transfers, or whatever else comes up on the road. Then you get in the car, plug it in, and nothing happens. Your phone charges, but CarPlay never shows up. That is where a lot of people get fooled. If a cable can charge your phone, it feels like it should also handle data, but that is not always true. Some USB-C cables are really built for charging only. They can deliver power, but inside, they either skip proper data wiring or use such cheap internal parts that data becomes slow, unreliable, or dead on arrival. That is why 2 cables that look almost identical can behave completely differently. One works the way you expect. The other charges your battery, but refuses to talk to your car, your computer, or your external drive. A lot of cheaper cables are built this way to save money. On the outside, they look modern. Inside, they are doing the bare minimum. So if all you ever do is charge a device, that cable may seem perfectly fine. The problem only shows up when you ask it to do something more. That is why the label matters. If the box or product page only says charging cable, treat that as a warning sign. If you need CarPlay, Android Auto, file transfers, or external storage, look for words like data sync and a real speed rating, for example, 20 gigabits per second. As a general rule, if data matters at all, buy a cable that supports at least USB 2.0 or 480 megabits per second. That is the practical minimum. From there, speeds can go much higher. But for most people, the real goal is much simpler. Make sure you did not accidentally buy a cable that only knows how to charge. The next big difference is charging power. And this is where USB-C confuses people in a very real, everyday way. You pack one charger and one USB-C cable for a trip, thinking that should cover everything. Your phone charges. Your earbuds charge. Then you plug that same cable into your laptop, and the battery starts creeping up like it is moving through syrup, Sometimes it even throws up that frustrating battery is not charging message. At that point, most people blame the charger. But very often, the cable is the part holding everything back. Because not all USB-C charging cables are built for the same job. Some are perfectly fine for a phone, some can handle tablets and laptops. And at the top end, with USB Power Delivery 3.1, USB-C can go all the way up to 240 watts. That is far beyond basic phone charging. That is enough for serious laptops and other power-hungry gear. But here is the part most people never hear about. Once charging moves into higher power, not every USB-C cable can keep up. Some cables are built for it, some are not. And if the cable cannot properly support that higher load, the whole setup plays it safe and drops to a slower level. That is why charging can feel painfully sluggish when you end up with a cheap, low-quality cable. That is also why the label matters more than the shape. When you buy a cable, do not stop at words like USB-C or fast charging. Those sound nice, but they do not tell you much. Look for a cable that clearly shows its wattage. If you only need to charge a phone, a cable rated around 30 watts to 60 watts is usually more than enough. If you want to charge a tablet or iPad too, 60 watts is a comfortable choice. But if a laptop is part of the plan, start at 100 watts. And for bigger or more power-hungry laptops, look for 140 watts or even 240 watts. In other words, the more demanding the device, the more that number matters. And if you want to make sure your cable is really delivering the wattage printed on the label, a USB tester can make this much easier. A tool like a Treatix USB tester or something similar lets you see the real numbers instead of trusting the packaging. You can check how many watts are actually flowing, and in some cases, whether the cable is even built properly for higher power charging. There is also one weird little trap that catches people off guard. Some very cheap gadgets use a USB-C port, but the hardware inside cuts corners. So you plug in a nice USB-C to USB-C cable and get nothing. No charging light, no response. Then you try an older USB-A to USB-C cable, and that one works. It feels completely backwards, but it happens. So keeping at least one USB-A to USB-C cable around is still a smart backup, especially for cheap lights, mini fans, small battery gadgets, and random low-cost electronics that were built to save every penny possible. So once again, USB-C gives you one clean, modern shape on the outside. Underneath, the story can be very different. The third big difference is video output. This is where USB-C confuses people fast. You plug your laptop into a monitor with a USB-C cable. Everything fits, and still, the screen stays black. That happens for three simple reasons. First, not every USB-C port can send video. Second, not every USB-C cable can carry video. Third, even if the laptop cable and monitor all use USB-C, that still does not guarantee they will work together for video. The laptop has to support video out on that port, and the cable has to be built for display. If either one is missing, the screen stays black. So what should you actually do? Do not assume the shape tells you anything. Check that your laptop's USB-C port supports video output by looking up your exact model's specs on the manufacturer website and checking for terms like DisplayPort Alt Mode. If you use a MacBook, most USB-C ports support video output, but it is still worth searching your exact model to be sure. Also check that the cable supports display output, and if you are buying a new one, look for labels like DisplayPort, Video, 8K, USB 4, or Thunderbolt. If those words are missing, treat it like a charging cable first and a video cable second. So after all that, what if you want to buy just one USB-C cable and be done with it? Start with one question. Do you need video output or not? If the answer is no, then shopping is much easier. Look for a cable that clearly lists both its charging power and its data speed. That means numbers like 100 watts or 140 watts for charging, and 10 gigabits per second, 20 gigabits per second, or 40 gigabits per second for data. That is usually the clearest sign that the cable can do more than just charge your phone. If the answer is yes, and you want one cable that can also handle monitors, docks, external S.Ds, and high-end setups, then the label needs to say a lot more. In that case, look for words like USB 4 or Thunderbolt, plus a real charging rating like 140 watts or 240 watts. If the listing says 8K, DisplayPort, or video output support, even better. That is how you know you are looking at a true all-in-one cable, not a basic charging cord dressed up in nicer packaging. The trade-off, of course, is price. These full-featured cables are usually much more expensive than ordinary charging cables, sometimes by a lot. And even if you buy one excellent main cable, it is still smart to keep one USB-A to USB-C cable around for those weird, cheap gadgets that still refuse to work properly over USB-C to USB-C. So in the end, USB-C did give us one plug for almost everything. It just did not make everything simple. If this video saved you from buying the wrong cable, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to Simple But Surprising for more everyday tech explained the simple way.